All right, so welcome everyone. This is our joint and mobility flexibility class. Yeah, we'll get started with some stretches. I have been reading my awesome new book. It's called Bone and Joint Health Plan.
Great.
Yeah, I think I mentioned briefly about that. So I'll be adding some information, sharing information that I'm reading through as well. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna moving forward, just keep myself, up to speed with health changes, recommendations. So yeah, but with that being said, let's go ahead and get on our feet. We'll start doing some of our neck stretches while also working on our balance.
Good.
So let's give ourselves a little bit of space. Morning, Mr. Ahmed. So again, just make sure you're wearing your comfy shoes. All right, and just romper extends, feet close together. Right, and then we're just hanging out here. Just maybe being a little bit mindful if your ankles are shaking or pronating, supinating. I just ordered two new pairs of running shoes. It was time. My
Great.
running shoes are kind of the soles on the bottom are wearing out a little bit. So I could tell that the support isn't quite there. So before I get injured or something starts flaring up, I just decided to order my new shoes. Let's look left to right. Usually with my runners, and again, most of them are in their teenage years. So they should be healthy and strong and still growing. Um, but I've noticed that, unless like if they've been in good conditioning, pretty healthy, and all of a sudden they feel foot, arch, shin splints, pains, it's usually due to their shoes. So if you feel like you haven't changed your shoes in a while, try to consider just up and down, checking them out before you get some random heel pain or arch pain. Last thing we want is to start limping around when you're on a consistent training. All right, close your eyes. So again, anytime we have our eyes closed and we're doing a balance movement, just and you feel unsafe, make sure you open your eyes, separate your feet, and just be in a safe, confident stance. Morning, Ella. Yeah, so when we're back on the chair, I'll go over some of the information I just read through, but yeah, I just kind of started the chapter on foods that provide anti-inflammatory benefits. So yeah, a lot of them are obvious, but there's some that you know I I added a supplement into my shopping cart because there's one that I was not aware of, and yeah, I think I might consider. All right, let's open your eyes and let's go with slow high knee march. But of course, your darker uh, fruits, your beets, your cherries, blueberries. I saw bok choy in there. Anything that's really just high in nutrients um, and antioxidants, it's gonna slow down. So, and I remember hearing about antioxidants back right after high school. I got sucked into one of those pyramid schemes with this, yeah, I see some smiles already. Let's do our standing hip openers. So drive that knee up, out, and down, and then up and down. So I think, yeah, obviously it was like I mentioned, it was like a pyramid scheme, but the supplements it had, I doubt that was it was selling supplements and trying to get subscriptions and the whole thing. my boss above me wanted me to sell more because obviously he was going to get paid more and all that stuff. So yeah, but it was with supplements, and we were educated briefly, like about maybe 30 minutes on what we were selling, and the rest of the information was just on how to make money. And but those 30 minutes were pretty, at least educational, because that's when I was 17 years old, learning about antioxidants and what it's good for, and carcinogenics and all these things that I've never heard of. Um, so yeah, so anyways, during that time, I was taking some of those supplements, and I put a lot of focus into antioxidants. And to be honest, since then until recently, that word hadn't lived in my brain for about 20 years. So now that I see it again, and just as a refresher, yeah, and with like the knowledge that I've gained, yeah, it makes a lot of sense why antioxidants would help with arthritis or inflammatory stuff. So, all right, let's go back to our chair, get a little bit of a break. And let's go ahead and sit on our left hand, right hand over. And I know, Kathleen, I think you um, educated me. Might have been a couple of you others as well, but during this whole time that I was trying to just get really ripped and buffed and gain muscle mass, I was eating a lot of steak, and one of the first things I see in there, it's like if you go with the protein source, make sure it's like fish, chicken, and try to avoid red meat. Um, so yeah, it's one of those that I have been warned, but my priority wasn't to worry about my joints. It was to grow muscles, and then yeah, so some of the information could favor one side over the other, but yeah, to be honest, now that I'm running again, I'm enjoying it. I'm thinking more long-term health. I was like, yeah, it makes sense. And then yeah, I follow these very strong, um, very muscular, men and women on social media. And it's pretty sad and scary how often someone reposts of someone that has, unfortunately passed away. Let's bring that right arm across. And I'm sure it's other factors, not just like they pass away for eating red meat all the time. Like I'm sure, maybe sometimes some of that community gets involved with like steroids or other stuff, and it's really unfortunate because it's young people, but but yeah, so yeah, this it's crazy what books, the information books have that you forget about. So, or at least I forgot about. Let's switch. I've also heard good things about, not on this book yet. I'm hoping I come across it, but on other medias about kimchi. I don't know if anyone eats kimchi regularly, but I think cabbage is a lot more nutritious than lettuce. I think lettuce is just water and in a leaf. Um, but yeah, cabbage definitely has, when you taste it and try it, there's something else in there. And with the vinegar, I'm sure. Does anyone I guess confirm or back that up with kimchi or swears by it?
Uh, I eat a lot of kimchi,
Uh,
not much because it goes into the smell of the body,
uh,
but sauerkraut. And now I found out that normally we eat it raw, but they found out, the latest I read, I hope it's true, that if you cook it, the benefits are the same as eating it raw.
for kimchi?
Either one,
Oh,
kimchi
okay.
or sauerkraut,
Oh, I see.
and it's great. I think it's very good for the gut.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another thing that I'm trying to also be mindful of. Let's do our snow angels. It's health gut, and you want to have for a good, strong digestive system and metabolism, you want to have the good bacteria in your gut, in your stomach. And and sometimes I forget what I was reading. I was reading something. It wasn't just some random video on Facebook that sometimes could be misleading. But I was reading it, and it mentioned how sometimes some of the bacteria needs about 7 or 8 or 9 months to develop, or at least to have a healthy gut. And the moment you get a little cut or an infection somewhere and you take antibiotics, you use the antibiotics to kind of treat that cut so it avoids the infection. But unfortunately, at the same time, that antibiotics could get rid of all the bacteria that you develop in your stomach
Yeah,
too.
that is true. It's
Yeah.
I have heard that from doctors and everything. And it's important
Yeah,
part is to have the antibiotics and immediately start with the regime of uh,
right. Yeah,
fiber and all kind of things.
yeah, to me, it didn't make sense why, I was like, well, how are antibiotics bad? Like, I always feel better after, you know, like an infection or something where I was recommended a virus or something. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that makes complete sense because antibiotics are there to take care of your body, and anything that's not supposed to be in there, get rid of it. Um, so, so yeah, because I know when sometimes, the prescription might say take all the antibiotics until you finish the whole container. And I mean, I'm not an expert in that field, but it almost sounds like, oh, maybe we should just take it until you feel better because, like, no, Jan, the whole thing. So, okay, see, that's what I'm asking. But yeah, it's who knows?
Yeah, well, all doctors said you have to take the whole prescription of antibiotics. Otherwise, it's half cured.
That's true. Yeah. That's why I'm not making videos on Facebook about antibiotics. I'm not gonna share information that I'm not completely confident about, but yeah, that does make sense too. And they're the experts, so but it does help, and there's reinforcements about that. Like make sure you finish the whole thing. Um, because at least that does bring some confidence into play. Let's go
The
ahead and do
best,
that.
the best thing is to ask the doctor because
Yep,
it may vary from person to person, but they normally just give you the doses that are applicable to you.
that's true. I always thought it was weird when I would get a container and it was just like half full. I was like, well, where's the rest of it? I was like,
Mhm.
I'm getting ripped off over here, but I guess they know. Raise that arm. That thumb.
Although I had some problems with my eyes a while ago, and I went to a doctor, and the doctor prescribed some medicine. I think it was antibiotics.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I
Is
don't
your neck
think I
hurting?
want to take them. I didn't. Then I went to the specialist ophthalmologist, and he said, well, I'm glad you didn't take them because that's not for this problem.
Oh man. See, and that's where, yeah, it could be a little bit nerve-wracking or stressful when you get those like mixed um reviews or suggestions. So switch. Just be gentle. We don't want to hurt ourselves. All right, let's get back on our feet. We'll go ahead and do the tandem stance. Okay, so right foot in front of our left. Right foot in front of our left. Does anyone have like a secret berry or like spice or something that they feel like it's almost been life-changing since they started using it or consuming it? Something like that. Trying to think. I think turmeric was for me during college. Um, it just felt so much better putting turmeric into my rice than, you know, taking a few ibuprofens whenever I felt pain. Like I just felt so much better and healthier about the situation. Let's go left to right. Up and down. All right, so be mindful. So close your eyes here. Remember, if you don't feel safe, then open your eyes, separate your legs. Open your eyes. All right, we're gonna elevate your left foot that's back there. And just elevate it. So if you can elevate it too much, at least try to just tap it. We're gonna do a single leg Romanian deadlift here, just body weight. So what I want you to do is just have your hands on your thighs and then just slide them down until you can't more or it starts feeling challenging and then back up. We've done this before, but with dumbbells on our hands. But I'm not too worried about the stretch here. I just want to work on the balance. So just go whatever's comfortable. If it's, you know, a 30-degree lean or a 45 or a 90, that's fine. So if you are feeling the stretch, you should feel it on your hamstring, maybe on your lower glute. And reset. Just kind of shake it off. Grab a little bit of water. You know that one foot could irritate your arch. Does anyone feel that way? My left arch or one of my arches already feels a little tingly. So but yeah, real quick. I think the supplement I added to my cart, it's I don't even think I could pronounce it. Quercetin. Several studies show that 500 milligrams of quercetin daily reduces joint stiffness, pain, and other symptoms for rheumatoid arthritis. You get 45 milligrams from a small onion and 30 milligrams from a small coffee. So it's one of those that comes from like I think what's the word of that group of veggies? I just read.
Could you
Didn't-
spell it?
Quercetin. Quercetin. There's a flavanols. It's onions, garlics, leeks, scallions, fennel, broccoli, uh, that category. Pretty much the
Yeah.
veggies you don't like as a child. When you're a kid and you don't like veggies, those are the ones that's good for pain and stiffness. Uh, so let's go left foot in front of our right. That antioxidants had uh a category, phytochemicals had a category, and these things were like teached and preached over college for like physiology and um chemistry. They're always brought up, but I've never heard of that one, and that one had its own category, and yeah, it tends to be those veggies that we usually sometimes might shy away from, but and yeah, and I can't think of eating 10 onions, to get my daily dose of quercetin. So let's look left to right. I did maybe about 2 years ago. I attempted to make my wife an Italian seafood dish, and it required scallions. And I swear for the longest time I thought scallions were what was it? I guess confused them with scallops, and I thought it was some type of like seafood item. And it required, only a little bit amount of scallions. And I was like, well, this is gonna be a very cheap seafood dish. And then yeah, I realized that scallions are just like a baby onion. Um, yeah, they're tasty. Up and down. And when you're looking into supplements, yeah, just do your quick little research too, because sometimes uh, they do have side effects, and you just want to make sure that you're not taking something that could backfire. And then sometimes too, the supplements they could be absorbed by a combination of maybe with another item in there. So just keep that in mind. Might get more bang for your buck with your research. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Okay, and same thing. So now our right leg is gonna be behind us. All right, so either lightly tap behind you or elevate, hands on your thighs, and then just slide your hands down. Working on my balance. This one's a lot easier for me. It's funny because this is where my hip is usually more irritated. Morning, Olivia.
Morning, Felipe.
Morning. Great. Great. Back on our feet. Back on our chair. Okay, let's do a gentle trunk rotation. So use the side of your chair. Reach a little bit more once you get comfortable and get that nice stretch. Good sides. And let's rotate to the other side. Once. Very good. Let's do our hip opener. So I'm going to sit near the front of the chair. Right leg comes out. This stretch. And then another thing with like eating foods that are, anti-inflammatory, a good thing with those with food or like an anti-inflammatory diet, it's because naturally um swelling and inflammation has its purpose and it helps with treatment too. So you don't want to completely get rid of that. And that was one of the concerns. It's like, well, what if I eat all these anti-inflammatory foods? Like, am I gonna let's rotate? Is it gonna slow down my healing process in some areas? But the foods don't usually do that. It's usually for to help slow it down. Um, Sometimes it won't even be the cure. You might, especially for like rheumatoid arthritis, but for that you might just need more maybe a prescription or treatment or strength, but it doesn't hurt for sure. And we'll slow it down and I think yeah, like you just gotta be more proactive than reactive. Because I could totally see someone reading a book like this. Let's do our performance stretch. And just maybe when they have some knee pain, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to cut off steaks so my knee can get better. And once it gets better, they might think that not eating steak is what solved the issue. When in reality, it might have just been naturally just the rest. But yeah, it's good stuff. Let's push down on that knee. I have a friend dealing with kidney stones, and yeah, they're going through it, trying to see what what they could eat to, reduce the pain or pass them through. Sounds painful. Bring that knee up. Feel that stretch here. Let's switch. Left ankle on that right knee. So yeah, so on the list of foods that typically influence inflammation, and you want to minimize, yeah, I see red meat, processed meats, um, processed simple, um, carbohydrates, cookies, cakes, some pastas, some breads, saturated fats, and fried foods. So yeah, sometimes the tastiest foods aren't the best for you. So Just add a little bit of pressure down on that knee. Bring that knee up, hug it out. Nice. Let's work on our wrists a little bit. Having right here. So just make a fist and then just in and out. Hopefully that isn't painful. But just in and out, up and down as well. Web them out. So separate your fingers out and away from each other. Just working on the little tendons in between each finger. And let's bring on our right hand each finger to the center of our palm without bending the knuckles. Okay, now let's do the same, but now let's bend each knuckle as we're bringing each finger individually to the center of our hand. Make a fist. Just relax. Fist. Relax. Right, let's switch. So we get each finger individually to the center of our hand. Is this painful for anyone?
No, it feels good. Good stretch. Helps the stiffness.
Yeah, honestly, this is probably the only time of the week where I do this, and I'm like, I should probably do this at least like once a day. Let's do each finger individually.
It's a good thing to do when you're in line at a store.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
If you can remember.
Yeah. No, I think about that stuff even like on a long car ride. I'm like, I wish I could use this time for something productive. And I always do the isometric neck stretches where I put my hand on my head and I push my hand. So if I'm not driving, I'll be next to my wife and I'll just be like right here pushing and just strengthening this. So, but yeah, it's one of those things where I kind of do find myself just webbing them out and
I
yeah.
don't think about doing these finger ones off
No,
the,
yeah,
unless
yeah,
you
exactly.
like when you specify it in class.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
oh,
it's easy, right? Let's go ahead and work on our legs a little bit more. I used to have one of those like the grip strength ones that have the little two bars. I have it on the pocket of my door when I'm driving and at red lights. Sometimes I just if I remember.
then I look at it and I forget to use it.
Yeah. Let's recline back. Bring your leg to your chest and then elevate that lower leg. Yeah, when I'm running and there's a red light, I'm rolling my ankles, I'm doing my ABCs, I'm stretching my calves, I'm stretching my hamstrings. Like sometimes I try to like the switch like speed up so I don't catch a light. And then there's sometimes where I'm crossing my fingers that the light turns red, so I have an opportunity to stretch. All right, let's go ahead and bring that right knee in and then just leg press it out, cycle it in. And switch. All right, let's back up. Give yourself enough room. We're gonna do our chair squats, okay? So like last time, we'll do 8, 3 sets of 8. So if you're doing the regular ones here, give me 3 sets of 8. If you're doing the leg extended, then do 8 of like the regular ones and then 8 for each leg, and depending on what variation you're doing. Okay. So let's go ahead, do the first set together. And then again, not using your hands, just stabbing your heels into the floor, and then pushing through your lower legs to your knees. Rise. Oops. 7 and 8. Awesome. All right, give yourself a little bit of rest, maybe 20, 30 seconds. I'm gonna go with my right leg extended or elevated. And just give a little bit of rest. All right, so get ready for that next set, whatever variation you're doing, and begin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh, that was tough. 7 and 8. All right, so 30 seconds rest. Once you've done your 8, and then switch to the other side. Oof. Last night I was looking for trail runs. I want to do a trail race next year. And I think I found one in mid to late January out there in the little ghost town of Calico, just past Barstow. There's a 30K and a 50K. So debating right now if I'm gonna do it or not. Left leg extended or elevated, or the first variation. Ready? And begin. So yeah, so we'll see. My only concern is that the shortest distance is a 18-mile run. And right now, the longest I've ran is 8 miles. I think I went 10 in Mammoth, but that was about 3 months ago. And this race is in 2 months. I don't know if I could build up to 18. Like 2 more. And, oof. All right, we're gonna work on our lower legs and then transition to our shoulders as we stand. So right leg elevated a little bit and just rotate that heel out and in. Doing some, it's pretty much causing internal rotation of your femur. Switch. So elevate that left leg, rotate out. Rotate that knee or that ankle out. Very good. All right, let's just do 20 quick heel raises here. Yeah, so right now I have Jan has her camera on. Morning, everyone. There's gonna be an evaluee in January or February, and it would be so awesome if like half the class could have their cameras on that day. So let's have our toe raises now. And then yeah, I think we were also encouraged to have more communication. I know we talk but yeah, so I'll wear like a hat that day or something, so you guys know that the person's gonna be here. I used to wear, when I first started these Zoom classes, I used to secretly wear a red hat when the class was gonna be really challenging. I think Ella remembers that. But and people started noticing. Maybe it took them like a month, but they were noticing this lift their right ankle. And Ella, you unmuted. You remember?
I remember that. I actually bought a red hat because I was working out outside at that time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just like, it was like every like 2 or 3 weeks, I would just throw in the hat in there, and yeah. Or no, I think we were meeting more frequently during the summer, so it was like every 3 days. I would just throw in the red hat. Now, yeah, the mics would come on and people would start complaining, or people would sign off.
Yeah, people would run away.
Yeah, people would just sign off and not return. Oh man.
Those are good workouts though. I go back and find those videos sometime and they were longer too. We were more than an hour then.
Yeah, we were going about an hour 20. Yeah,
Do it again.
let's do it. I'll start bringing that red hat. Sunny, what? Hey, let's go. There it is. It looks pink now because it's been 5 years, but it's a little faded. So let's get on our feet. We're gonna go to our shoulders. Yeah, so grab a broomstick, grab some water if you want.
So it's kind of a college student challenge now to think for this participation, to think about something to contribute or to ask a question.
Right.
It's actually good for our brains.
Yeah, yeah.
And we understand about the college thing. So this is what I'll share today. This kimchi at Costco is good, and it's a reasonable size package.
Do you eat that with everything? Or like on the side?
Yeah,
That's
it
the one I
depends.
tried. That's the
You
one,
could-
yeah.
Yeah, it's Costco's easy. Don't have to go to if you don't regularly go to the Asian market or H Mart.
Yeah. 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 I'm fortunately enough to have an H Mart within a mile of my house. And then I know I just saw, of course it was on social media. I think it was on TikTok, but right next to Knott's Berry Farm, I think there's a little store that specializes on just kimchi, and they have over 100 varieties of it and seasonings. So I was just like, ooh,
Wow.
I was just like,
You're
I know.
so lucky. Yeah.
Well, that's why not very far. You're in Fountain Valley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like between us. So, but yeah, I need to start from the basics. I can't just jump into some really exotic kimchi but
No, this is regular style. I mean, it's just like normal. And you just put a tiny bit because otherwise your digestive system will go crazy.
yeah. See, and
Just the little rice.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'll give it a shot because I feel like I might get ambitious and yeah, I might regret it. When I was back in my college years, uh, I had a girlfriend who her parents were German, and that was the first time I tried sauerkraut. And yeah, I was confused. I did not know how to feel about it, but yeah, it grew into me. Let's go here, left to right. But yeah, that's one that I think I could, because yeah, I like having, more seasoning on my food, especially on rice sometimes. So left to right, left shoulder. So yeah, I probably, just so you're aware, yeah, thanks for sharing, Jan. I might even like have like a weekly, like, optional participation discussion where if we're talking about a specific supplement or something that, we mentioned like bile, gut bacteria, people could just share like a quick little video like that or comments. Let's go 30 degrees forward. See, I wonder, like in the Hispanic culture, like we grew up with like having this huge jar of like um veggies, broccoli, onions, carrots, jalapenos on this vinegar jar. I wonder if like that's like comparable, let's go 60 degrees, or if the cabbage just has naturally more uh, you know, the phytochemicals and antioxidants. But I'll look into that too. I just remember my dad had this huge container, and to me it seemed like this jar of like grossness as a 5-year-old. Let's go forward. And like now, yeah, I don't see them around so much. I sometimes when I go to my aunt's house, I'll see this big container of pickled veggies. But yeah, I'm sure it has some good gut stuff. All right, let's go behind. I also saw someone on social media make a very, they said it was like a super tasty salsa. They just got the pickled like jalapeno, carrots, like the you find in like your Hispanic section at the grocery store, and it has vinegar in there. So you just open it. I think you just take the little stems off the jalapeno, throw everything in the blender, and then yeah, that makes a good salsa apparently. So I need to try that too. Let's go right. Has anyone tried that before? I just saw that on social media.
No. That's gross.
So so yeah, so you said Costco, right, Jan? Okay. I think my wife's going to Costco and she always texts me, hey, I'm at Costco, what do you need? So I'm gonna ask for it today. Let's go 30 degrees.
Julio, have you been
Okay.
to a Korean restaurant?
Yeah, I have several times, and not gonna lie, sometimes there's so many options and toppings and dishes that I don't know exactly what they are. So sometimes I haven't ventured to try them all, but do Do you know what I mean? Like I went to
Yeah.
I went to a shabu shabu place. I know it's not Korean. Is that Korean? I'm sorry. But I went to shabu shabu and they had so many things. I was just like, I don't even know like how this is gonna taste. So let's go 60 degrees.
You
But
say that you have an H Mart near your house, right?
yes, yes,
Okay, do they have the food court in there?
yes.
Okay, so you just go there and order the bibimbap. It's just the rice in the bowl and the
Uh-huh.
yeah, the rice they put it's really crunchy and on top it's only veggies. You have spinach, carrots, soybean, instead the soybean, how to say that? The
Can you?
chopped soybean. So it's like a vegetable dish. And
Yeah.
usually they accompany that dish with different side dishes. So you can try the kimchi, the
Oh. Can you
cucumber pickles.
can you type the name of the dish or the order on the chat? I might go today.
Yeah, try that one because it's really good, and that you get used to all. Usually when they serve you a bowl, they always about 5 side dishes. So you can try all of them and there's kimchi in there. So you can
Oh,
try and see how do
okay.
you like the kimchi.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I try it, it's really healthy in the sense, the under of the rice is really crunchy, and on
Yeah.
top they have an egg and all, I think 3 or 5 different type of veggie, and you just mix them together and you eat, and
Yeah.
you have the golgam chum. It's kind of a spicy hot
Thank you,
sauce,
Jen.
but not very spicy, so it's really good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the bibimbap. Yeah.
okay. Got it. Yeah. Thanks, Jen. I think Jen's tried it before. But yeah, it's down the street and like I said, I want to get more of my food. I think I'm over just like thinking about protein, how much protein it has and how much sugar it has. I think I need to be a little bit more mindful of, the actual nutrients that it's providing. All right, let's lift. Lift back. All right. Very good. All right. It's 10. No, it's 9:57. Okay, so we're gonna finish off with some standing stretches. So one that I like doing is using the chair and then also supporting yourself with like a table or a wall, but just kind of going over, opening up the hips. I think we're due for like a get together or like a potluck. I think Jan wants to open up her house for a potluck. Just kidding, Jan. No, I think it has been a minute since we last met at Mossberg Park. I think that was about 2 years ago. Maybe a little bit longer. Okay, let's switch sides. It would be nice to regroup, or even for, coffee, or we
Yeah.
we could meet up at H Mart
Yeah.
and go for a walk from there. Park at H Mart, go for a walk, and then come back and go to like their little food court. Debbie and Terry, I'm gonna have you folks drive out. You guys are a little bit further away. Ah, let's all go visit Terry out there in the valley. Wow. And then we'll finish off with some of our standing warm-up stretches that are worthwhile and I really enjoy. So we'll go with our big hula hoops, so giant hip circles. Yesterday we had our practice at in Bueno Park. There's Ralph B. Clark Park out there off like Rosecrans and Beach. And it's pretty hilly and my plan was to, run the practice and give the team a workout. And then I was gonna run after. But my legs were so tired that I just I skipped the run, just came home and let's switch. A little bit after I got home, I just ran here on the river canal where it was flatter. But yeah, just I bring that up just because sometimes I think we have plans for workouts and it could be in the early part of the day, you don't feel ready for it, but maybe give yourself a couple hours and if you're not busy to get back on that workout. Oh, tiny. All right, and then let's do our ab circles. So keep your back straight and check your hip. I'm gonna try to go today, Miss Wynn, or if not tomorrow, and then try that. Oh, try that dish. And we'll finish off with a little bit of leg work and balance. So, Romberg stance here, and then just standing Jane Fonda's. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let's switch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Awesome. Very good. Oof. Alrighty. I think we are good for today. But before we head out, do we have any questions or comments? All right. So yeah, if you wanna try that dish out, I think Jan, bibimbap. So yeah, try that.
How do you
Um,
pronounce that?
Is it correct me, Ms. Wayne, is it bibimbap?
Yeah,
What?
just like that. Yeah.
Okay,
Bitmap.
bibimbap. So cool, I'm excited. I like when people suggest food. I'm on it with
Where
that.
again is this one?
She said H Mart.
Yeah, if they have the food court, you can order. I think it's the first dish, Korean dish that I try. I really liked it, and after that, I hook with other dishes too.
I'll try it.
Yeah. Do you usually just eat it how it is, or do you recommend adding a sauce to it?
Yeah, usually they have I think gochujang. It's like the sauce, not too very spicy. It's
Mhm.
just a sriracha Vietnamese there, but it's not the same. It's kind of sweeter, and you just put on it, mix everything. The bibimbap, you can choose with veggies only, or you can add some egg or some
Mhm.
meat in there. So that's
Yeah.
the three choices that you have.
Anything that's like a bunch of ingredients and just mix, like
Yeah, you have to mix
I
because
love
when
that
they
stuff.
bring it out, you have the rice on the bottom, and on top you have different, I think 5 different veggies. You have mushroom, soybean, chop suey, spinach, carrots, and something
yeah.
else depending what they
hungry.
have. And
Yeah.
after that, you just mix together and you eat.
Is
That-
that Vietnamese
No, it's Korean food.
or Korean? Thank you.
Salivating at the.
Yeah, I'm
I think,
hungry.
I think the
Okay.
American
I am
version.
getting ready for it.
I know.
Okay.
I think the American version is like a chicken pot pie, which is not as healthy. So, yeah. All right, everyone. Well, I appreciate all the feedback.
Okay. Thank you very
Leo.
much.
Thank you.
I'll see you next
Bye,
week.
Thank you.
Leo.
Bye, Terry. Bye, everyone.
Gracias,
Bye.
Julio.
Bye.
Ah,
Take care.